This section covers the wedding meeting, as well as planning and execution. Your meeting with the bride and groom is where you button up the details of how the wedding reception will flow and how to make it seamless and magical. Although you may only be meeting to discuss whether or not you'll be doing the wedding, explain to the customer that the best way to do this is to allow you to share how you use a wedding reception planner to weave it all together, and this will give you a clear vision of what to expect at the reception. This will allow you to control the questions and will probably address most of them as you fill out the wedding reception planner. Don't miss out on using this wedding reception planner. This will help you and them see a clear vision of what they want, and at the same time, you've just built yourself in that vision. Stay away from fake enthusiasm and bad jokes, and talk about them, not you. What do they do for work? Where are they from? What radio stations do they listen to? What CDs are in their player right now? And more importantly, are they dancers? Are they dancers is important because people that don't dance need a little more leading when it comes to the question of what kind of music they like to dance to. Share with them what most crowds like to dance to. Begin gathering important details for the planner. First, the location of the reception. Compliment them on their choice. Fill in the contact's name. Any good experiences that you've had with this contact at this particular venue. The phone number for the contact in case you need to verify any details or ask further questions. Filling out ceremony location will allow you to anticipate when the bride and groom will actually arrive at the reception. Greeting them when they arrive is a nice touch. Also, the number of people attending the reception. This is important so that you'll make sure that you have the appropriate amount of gear to cover the reception. The reason you want to know what time the guests are arriving is because you may be starting at a different time than that. It's never good to be setting up while guests are arriving. Even if you're there on time, it does make you look late. Any lugging of equipment or testing of equipment should well be over before the first guest arrives. Fill in the photographer's name and the videographer's name if they're applicable. You'll want to know their names and be familiar with them as they're part of the team. Make sure you share with the bride and groom that what you do is work with each of these team members to make sure that their event is magical and flawless and that things flow perfectly. The next information to gather is whether the bridal party will be introduced or not. Most often the answer to this question is yes, but not always. There can be different variations of these introductions. Not always are grandparents introduced. Sometimes they are announced from tables of honor prior to the bridal party being announced. Oftentimes grandparents are not into the fanfare of being announced into a room. It's your job to lay out these different options for the bride and groom. Let them decide what's best for them and how they'd like to proceed with the announcements. If there are any single, divorced, or widowed parents, work out the details of who will escort who in and what their relationships are and how they'd like to be announced. Understand the expectations of the bride and groom when they're announced into the room. Most brides and grooms want to be announced into the room in a dignified and elegant way, a lot like perhaps someone winning an Academy Award. However, some people want to be introduced in a more wild and crazy way and maybe be introduced into the room like a football team. Once you understand the bride and groom's vision, you can then help them to pick an appropriate piece of music for the introduction. You want to make sure that each of the names on the wedding reception planner are spelled out phonetically so that you can meet, greet, and introduce everyone with the appropriate pronunciation of each of their names. This is key. This is your chance to make a very good first impression. Many people will judge you by how smoothly the introductions go. Make sure that they're perfect. Start off on the right foot and you'll earn everyone's respect right away. By helping the bride and groom collect this information, you've already put yourself into the vision of their special day. You're helping to plan. Next, we move down to another choice for the bride and groom. Do they want to do their first dance as they first walk into the room, or do they want to wait until after dinner? Before this decision can be made, there's some questions that need to be asked of the bride and groom. Will this be a sit-down meal or will it be a buffet? If it's a buffet, will the tables be placed on the dance floor? These are questions that are important to know when making these choices, and will also show that you have a keen sense of planning. If the bride and groom ask you which way to go with the first dance, make the recommendation that the bride and groom do their first dance as they walk into the room. There's a magical energy when newlyweds first walk into a reception after being wed. It's priceless. Paint this picture for the bride and groom to see. I'll introduce the bridal party into the room and ask them to stand beside the dance floor. Then we'll invite the both of you in. The crowd will cheer. You'll make your way to the dance floor, pass your bouquet off to the maid of honor, make your way to the dance floor for your first dance. The bridal party and your family will all be beside the dance floor and will be the backdrop for your first dance. This will be a magical moment, and we'll kick the wedding reception off in grand style. In order for this to all happen, you must first have the blessing of the wedding coordinator. Make sure that she's in the loop and understands what you're doing. Sometimes wedding coordinators do things differently, and you have to respect this. Never argue with a wedding coordinator. Work with them. There are other ways to do it, and the first dance can take place after dinner. It makes a nice presentation to do the first dance first. Proper etiquette is that nobody dances until the bride and groom have had their first dance. The advantage of doing the first dance right away is, if something unexpected happens that makes dinner take too long or an unexpected event, you can get people up to dance, as the bride and groom have done their first dance. Let's for a moment go back to the introductions. The introductions cannot take place until everyone is ready for introductions. What needs to happen, with the help of the wedding coordinator, is that all the members of the bridal party and family need to be gathered and lined up for introductions, in the order which they'll be introduced. Share with the bride and groom that the order which they place them on this sheet will be the same order that they're introduced. Once you've lined them up, it's important that you explain exactly what's going to happen and where they need to go. Double check your lineup and make sure that everyone is in the proper position. Remember, it's proper etiquette that all ladies stand closest to the gentlemen's hearts as you announce them into the room. Review the game plan once again. Explain to the bridal party exactly where they're going to go, how they're going to get there, where they're going to stand, and what's going to happen after. It might sound like this. What we're going to ask you to do is make your way onto the dance floor and stand on the side of the dance floor. You folks will be the backdrop for the first dance. Once the first dance is completed, I'll motion all of you to head to your assigned seating. Walking the bride and groom through these steps with the wedding reception planner will show them the detail and passion you have for your work. We've now completed the wedding reception planner all the way up to the first dance. After the first dance, you now invite the bridal party and the bride and groom and parents to make their way to their assigned seating, and that the best man will now propose a toast. Remember, before the best man can propose a toast, it's proper etiquette that the bride and groom be seated. They are the guests of honor, and they are the ones that are being toasted. Make sure the bride and groom and best man know this. Next, you need to clarify how many toasts there will actually be. Traditionally, it's the best man, but sometimes another toast can take place. And the father of the bride may have some words to share as well. For this to flow smoothly, you need to know all of these things in advance. Any blessings would take place at this time. Again, this information needs to be known in advance so that this can flow smoothly. You need to know who's leading the blessing, where they're seated, and to make sure to let them know that they'll receive the microphone from the person after their last toast. There can be different variations of this, but checking with the bride and groom at this time will iron those out in advance. Welcome all of the guests on behalf of the bride and groom and both of their families. If there are any particular dining instructions that you've received from the wedding coordinator or banquet captain, now would be the appropriate time to mention those. Together, you've now filled everything out on the wedding reception planner, all the way up to the meal. Okay, now it's time to talk about what particular style of music that the bride and groom would like to have during dinner. Also, it's an appropriate time to talk about what style of music they're looking for during cocktail hour before they arrive. Cocktail hour is generally the hour before the bride and groom actually arrive at the reception. They leave the church and most often take pictures for that time period. Sometimes outside vendors are hired to handle the cocktail hour, a pianist, a harpist, or a string section. For cocktail hour music suggestions, go to the CD-ROM included in your course. Together, you've now planned the wedding reception all the way up to the meal. By now, the bride and groom are definitely sure that they've picked the right person for this job. During the actual event while people are dining, this is a great time to check in with the videographer and photographer as well as the wedding coordinator to make sure everybody is on the same page. Consult with them about the order of events and what's going to take place after dinner. The bride and groom will of course be served first and will finish first. And most often, they'll work their way from table to table meeting and greeting people, even if they've already had a receiving line at the church. This time period while the bride and groom are walking from table to table greeting people is an opportune time to work in those requests that the bride and groom have given you that perhaps are not danceable, but yet are songs that they'd like to hear. The next item on the wedding reception planner to fill out is the cake cutting. You'll want to talk to the bride and groom and the coordinator about what the policies of the house are. Sometimes wedding coordinators like to wait until all the tables are cleared before cake cutting. So it's important that you get together with the wedding coordinator to find out when it's best for them to cut the cake. You'll also want to work with the bride and groom to find an appropriate piece of music for the cake cutting. Important thing to note, the cake is the first thing that the bride and groom own and share together. So it's really important that you do not encourage any kind of cake smashing. It does not set a good tone for the wedding reception and can sometimes cause a scene. Recommend to the bride and groom that the two parents' dances take place immediately following the cake cutting. Recommend to the bride and groom that they inform their parents that these dances will take place after the cake. That way, they will have a cue and can anticipate exactly when these dances will take place. This will help to make things work smoothly and look magical. To help the photographers with their job, ask the people to allow the photographers to get their shots in first, and that you'll have the bride and groom remain for a few moments so that they can get pictures. After the photographers have gotten their picture, invite the rest of the people to come up and get their pictures of the bride and groom at the cake. When you share all these small details with the bride and groom, they'll be more confident that you are certainly the right person to do this job. Now let's move to the next item on the wedding reception planner. This would be the father and bride dance. The first question you'll need to ask is if this dance is going to take place. The second question is if they had a particular song that they'd like to dance to. Many times, the bride does not have a particular song picked out for this dance. On the Mobile DJ Road to Success CD-ROM, you'll find some great ideas for father and bride dances. Once you've helped her to find the right song, let's talk about the timing and the flow and how to make it seamless. We've already talked about how these dances will follow the cake. Here's a great plan to share with the bride. When the cake cutting has finished, make sure that the bride understands that you'll be watching. Agree to a signal so that you can begin the song that they'll dance to. Share with the bride that what you'd like her to do is take her father by the hand when the song begins and lead him to the dance floor. Together, walk to the center of the dance floor as the music begins. Many people think that they need to be in dance position as soon as the song starts. However, music sets the tone. It builds anticipation. There'll be no need for lengthy announcements. Simply walk together to the dance floor, and that will tell the entire story. Let the music set the tone. It will be duly noted. People will know what's taking place. The only announcement that may need to be made is that people need to leave some room on the dance floor. They don't have to sit down, but leave some room on the dance floor for a special moment. Once the bride and father have completed their dance, likewise for the groom and his mother. Ask the groom to walk over and take his mother by the hand and lead her out to the dance floor as well. This approach will make it magical and seamless. It will look like it was just supposed to happen, even though you've done some upfront planning to make sure it happens this way. The next order of events on the wedding reception planner is the bridal party dance. Sometimes this happens, sometimes it doesn't. You may want to suggest to the bride and groom that this is a perfect time for a photographer to capture a great moment. And once this dance is completed, it's time to open up the dance floor to general dancing for the guests. You have the bridal party and the bride and groom on the dance floor. They are the bridal party and should begin the festivities. They set the pace and the tone for the wedding reception. Remember, it's a celebration. Because the crowd has been seated, this is the perfect time to get them up on their feet and on the dance floor. Now at the music selection on the wedding reception planner, ask the bride and groom to rate each category of music with a number from 1 to 10, 1 being they dislike, 10 being they love. This will give you a roadmap of what type of music to put together in your playlist. It allows them to pick direction rather than particular songs. Now when you put your playlist together, you can proportionally pick each style of music that they've chosen. You'll know what excites them and what to stay away from. Because they've not picked particular songs, if they happen to not be big dancers, you're not trapped into playing songs that are not danceable. They've only picked directions for you to head. If they have a hard time with this, share with them what most crowds like to dance to. Use any non-danceable selections in the cocktail hour or the end of dinner or during dinner. If the bride and groom insist on playing non-danceable music, simply ask them, "Hey, you've picked some great selections. What if people don't dance to them? Would it be okay for me to put some selections in that I think people might like to dance to?" I don't think I've ever heard anyone answer that question with a no. You now have a license to pick selections that are happy and up-tempo, ones that you know will fill the dance floor. Start with their requests and change if the response is poor. They won't need to be told when their requests don't work. They'll witness it firsthand and thank you later for your expertise. Okay, we're in dance mode, but there are a couple of other festivities that need to be addressed. Next will be the garter and bouquet toss. Here's how the garter and bouquet work. First, you invite the bride and groom out to the dance floor. Request that someone slide a chair out into the center of the dance floor. Ask the bride to be seated. Consult with the bride and groom about the appropriate selection of music for this event. There are some song selections on the CD-ROM included in your course, listed under Music for Festivities. The whole idea with this festivity is simply to make it fun. However, stay away from tired old jokes like wrong leg, and avoid standing on the dance floor with the bride and groom. Let a fun piece of music lead them and let them have fun with it. If a bride and groom are very showy, well, it will be reflected in their actions. If they're shy, they certainly wouldn't want you to make a spectacle of it. Once the bride is seated, you then invite the groom to take the garter off her leg. Then, after you've made sure that the garter is somewhere nearby, and you've checked with the photographers to make sure that they're in position and they're ready for this to happen, you invite all of the single ladies out to the dance floor. Encourage the crowd to count to 3 with you, and the bride will launch the bouquet. Make sure you get the name of the person who's caught the bouquet, as you'll need to call her up in a few moments. Next, invite all of the single gentlemen out to the dance floor. Make sure the groom is in position, and again, ask the crowd to count to 3 with you as the groom launches the garter. Ask the recipient to remain on the dance floor. Invite someone to bring the chair back out into the middle of the dance floor. Request that the lady that caught the bouquet come join the bride and groom and the recipient of the garter on the dance floor and be seated. Using an appropriate piece of music, ask the person who caught the garter to slide it up the leg of the girl that caught the bouquet until the bride and groom tell them to stop. Again, a fun piece of music should be the only thing that you need to use to make this happen and be fun. Once this festivity is completed, it's time to invite the guests back out onto the dance floor and for you to continue with your playlist. Now there's just one more thing to address with the bride and groom in regards to the wedding planner. The first thing that you want to find out is if in fact a formal last dance is going to happen. If the bride and groom are shy, they may just want to invite all couples out onto the dance floor to join them in this last dance. Otherwise, ask all of the guests to join around the dance floor to share in the last dance with the bride and groom. Invite the bride and groom out to the center of the dance floor for this last formal dance of the reception. Have the bride and groom pick a last dance for the reception. Perhaps it's a second choice that they didn't use for their first dance together. This can make a great ending to a perfect day. This last dance will be something that they remember for a lifetime, as all of their friends and family surround them for a last dance. There you have it. You've planned an entire wedding, and we've walked through all the steps of an execution of a complete wedding reception. Now that together you've filled out this wedding reception planner, there's no way they're going to go to another DJ for their wedding reception. You're a part of their day. You've helped them plan it. You're a part of their vision, and you've now made a connection. Now when you show up at the wedding reception, you'll not just be a DJ, but a friend who helped to plan their wedding reception. There is some other important information that goes hand in hand with this wedding reception planner. That is that you're always smiling at a wedding reception or any other event. It's so important. If you've ever seen a DJ at a reception or a party and they're not smiling, it's because they just don't get it. When you smile, it's infectious. People will smile back at you. It's so powerful, and it adds to the festive atmosphere of any kind of event. Also, remember, be attentive. You're not at a party, you're working. You always need to be at your console, always watching and being aware of everything that's going on in the room, always available to make any announcements or be helpful in any way. Your job is to be on your game. Remember, when you look expensive, you are. Another important thing to remember is that photographers, videographers, and wedding coordinators are your best referral base. When you make their job easy, they'll always remember you and always refer you. When you make their job more challenging, well, they'll just remember you. Always be gracious, and always inform members of your team before you make any changes that will change the atmosphere or the direction of the reception. Never launch any festivities without first checking with the wedding reception coordinator and checking with the videographer and photographer to make sure that they're always ready to capture these moments. They only have one chance to capture this. There is no retake of an entrance into a room or a throwing of a bouquet. These points are so important, and remember, as you work in different styles of weddings and different types of weddings, there isn't always going to be a wedding coordinator or a banquet captain to help you with these decisions. Sometimes they'll be made all by yourself. Sometimes wedding coordinators control all of the flow of events, and you just follow their leads. Either way, your MC skills and insight into a wedding reception coordination are very important.